The video series Glycemic Control was developed by the Georgia and Oklahoma Academies of Family Physicians as part of the Go Diabetes initiatives. The Glycemic Control series consists of 5 video vignettes, each outlining best practices in the care of diabetic patients. Please proceed to the registration page for more information on the approved number of prescribed credits for this activity as assigned by the American Academy of Family Physicians and AMA PRA Category 1 credit as assigned by the Georgia Academy of Family Physicians. Upon completion of each video vignette, please return to the Resources video page on the Go Diabetes website to complete the activity evaluation and earn your CME. This activity is supported in part by an educational grant from Sanofi Aventis. We thank you for participating in this online activity and hope it serves as a valuable educational tool.
Now, we talked about how you're going to split that total daily dose. Half of it is basal, then half of it is bolus. Well, what if whenever you give the bolus, how do you know how much to give at each meal? Because if your meal size varies and you need to give more insulin per meal. The most physiologic way to do it's based on carbohydrate counting. And carbohydrates are what raise blood sugar after you eat. If you don't eat carbohydrate at your meal, then your insulin levels don't need to go up. That's the whole theory of the Atkins diet of why it works, is because your insulin levels never need to go up to take care of a carbo load, you know. And so you never have this spike in blood sugar that causes a spike in insulin that causes weight gain. And so you teach people how to give insulin and count carbs, and it's not as hard as what you might think. We were talking yesterday, what's the best way to learn to carb count? And my answer to that is there's a lot of ways. You know, there's so many resources you can put in. You can get an app on your iPhone, you can carry a little book with you, you can do it a dozen ways. It's kind of like weight loss. What's the best way to lose weight? Well, you can lose weight by Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Atkins diet, taking pills. You know, there's a lot of ways you can lose. Same thing with carb counting. There's a great book called Calorie King, and you could go to calorieking.com, and there is an app. I don't know if there's an app for your iPhone, but there was an app that you could put on a PDA, and they do make a nice little pocket reference that counts carbs, fat grams, calories. It's got fast food, and for somebody that's trying to do that. And people are going to, type 1s are going to take insulin, or type 2s for that matter could do this as well, take insulin based on the amount of carbohydrate that they're ingesting. So most people will start somewhere like around the 1 to 15 range. So if you eat 15 grams of carbohydrate, you take a unit of insulin. That 15 grams is what some people will refer to as 1 serving. Okay, and that's a good starting point for most type 1s. Now, if you're talking about a pediatric type 1, it's a different scenario, but an adult type 1, this would be a good starting point. And so, you know, like a slice of bread's 15, and so if you eat, for example, if you eat an apple and a ham sandwich and a bag of chips, okay, well, you would think, well, a sandwich has 2 slices of bread, that's 30 grams. An apple's about 15, so that's about 45. A bag of chips is probably about 25, so that's about 70. So, and you divide 70 by 15 and give yourself that much insulin for the meal you just ate. So that's how you do it.
In the carbohydrate gram counting, are they factoring in fiber? Because unfortunately, all carbs are not created equal, and one of the things that's problem with nutrition facts is that they count everything, which is a white fluffy starch which will quickly raise the sugar, and then fiber in there. So I don't know if that's adjusted for any company.
You know, whenever I learned to do it, whenever I worked with a diabetes educator to learn myself, and other times that I've done it, they really don't try to, I mean, it's complicated enough trying to teach people about carbs without having to think, well, this is a complex carb, or this is a, fiber, and that kind of thing. I think the rate is a little bit slower when you have a lot of fiber, you know, as far as blood sugar raising, but most people don't try to keep it. My theory is keep it as simple as possible. You might have to tweak some foods a little bit. You know, for example, like Mexican food that's got a lot of carbohydrate and a lot of fat. it slows down your absorption a lot. And so there's certain things that you can do, particularly if you have an insulin pump that lets you adjust for that. And then after you start that 1 to 15, then you look at 2-hour postprandials. If you're less than 180, perfect. If you're not less than 180, then maybe you need to go down a little bit lower. Maybe it needs to be 1 to 12 or 1 to 10, somewhere in that range, okay? If you're getting too low, then you need to reverse the opposite way. This was a study that showed this was using split-dose insulin, and they were giving patients the permission to self-titrate with some supervision. And this was using, I think, a 70-30 insulin. And they started people at 10 units twice a day, and they gave them this chart. They said if most of your values in the last 3 days fall in the range of less than 80, you need to go down by 2 units. So you go down to 8 units twice a day. If you were 80 to 109, you made no change, and they found this was a safe way to do it, which I thought was interesting because it relies on patients being able to, educated and then being able to check their blood sugar. This was another study that compared type 2 diabetics that were on metformin. They had A1Cs above 8. They started the people in the top group up here, they started them on Lantus versus the people here. They started on 70-30 insulin before breakfast and dinner. They continued them on metformin plus or minus a TZD. Same thing down here, continued them on metformin plus or minus a TZD. And they treated the target with a goal sugar of 80 to 110. What would you expect to happen? Who's going to have better blood sugars? The people that have Lantus or the people that have 70-30? What? Same? Lantus? Okay. Remember, with 70-30, you're getting mealtime coverage and basal insulin coverage. Disregard the column on the left, but on the right, these were patients with A1Cs less than 7. People treated with 70-30, significantly larger percentage of people met targets there versus people on Lantus. So that's just kind of interesting that, although our preference for most people is to start a pure basal insulin, you do tend to get more blood sugar lowering when you use a mixed insulin like that because you get mealtime coverage as well. Now, as I mentioned, lower blood sugars mean weight gain and more hypoglycemia. So minor hypoglycemia was seen 43% of the time in people who took 70-30 versus 16% of the time in people who took glargine. Weight gain, people who took 70-30 gained about, that's kilograms, so that's about 12 pounds. People who took glargine gained about 8 pounds. So, that's just what you would expect. All right, earlier somebody was asking, what about pills when you start insulin? Whenever you start insulin, general rules. Now, there's always some rooms and some caveats to this, but most people are going to continue them on the metformin, okay? It's complementary. You'll be able to use less insulin if you keep them on the metformin. Sulfonylureas, if you have them on a basal only, then most people, it probably makes sense to continue them on their sulfonylurea. That's assuming it gives you a little bit of mealtime coverage. If I have somebody that's on big doses of a basal, then I won't. If I have somebody who I'm able to keep controlled with metformin, glimepiride, and glargine, and then you do get some benefit. But if you're using a pre-mixed insulin and when you're giving a bolus basal type, then I won't continue them on their sulfonylurea. TZDs, there's some admonitions there to proceed with caution. It does exacerbate weight gain and edema. So, general rule, stay with metformin. Consider stopping the sulfonylurea. There might be some cases in which it makes sense to keep them on it. This next slide talks about amylin. Amylin is a hormone that's made in the beta cell of your pancreas. It's released with insulin in response to a glucose load. And so it's kind of similar to an incretin, although since it's not made by the intestine, it's not technically an incretin, but it has some incretin-like effects. It shuts down gluconeogenesis. It makes somebody who takes it feel full. And so it's similar. And so it's indicated. Now, beta cell destruction, which happens in type 1 diabetes, this hormone goes away along with insulin. And so this is a hormone that you can take along with it. I've taken amylin for about I've taken it before, but I had a sample that I was trying, and it makes a difference. I mean, you'll notice that your blood sugars stay down, you feel full, you can have some nausea. And there is a titration to get used to the dosing, kind of similar to what you would see with like Byetta or Victoza. You can also use this in type 2 diabetics who are on insulin as well, whereas like type 2 diabetics who are on insulin plus it's really not indicated to put them on a GLP-1 analog. Do we do it? Do I have patients? Yeah, that are on both. I mean, I have patients on both.